Good morning, I'm Terence Allmark. I'm the Business Development Manager at UKTelehealthcare. Thank you for registering and joining today's event. While we're waiting for the final delegates to join, I can still see, and we're expecting a few more delegates to join. I'd just like to welcome you to today's UKTelehealthcare Digital Marketplace 2. This is the last of our events in the month of June, last of our scheduled events. If you missed the two events we had earlier this month, you can see the recordings and all the presentations on the UKTelehealthcare website. We are planning further events in September. Details of these events will also be posted on the website uktelehealthcare.com/events, and we'll also notify you of those events via email, so keep an eye on your inbox. Today we will have 4 presentations, and those presentations will come from Everon, Care, Legrand and Chubb. Now they'll be sharing with you a range of products and services to help support vulnerable people stay independent and live better lives. Presentations will then be followed by a panel session discussing text training. The session will be chaired by Jerry Allmark, Managing Director of UKTelehealthcare, and the panelists will include representation from Disabled Living Foundation, BCS Chartered Institute for IT, the European Knowledge Tree Group, CCOPS, and from Telealarm. During today's events, please use the chat to post any questions to the presenters, and those questions I will put to the presenters at the end of each of their presentations. Can you address your questions to both the participants and the attendees in the chat feature? In that way, it means that everybody will be able to keep up and follow the discussion flow. As mentioned earlier, today's event will be recorded and the presentations will be posted on the UK Telehealthcare website. To tweet today's event, please use the UK Telehealthcare news and the text, the #text, as you can see on the screen. Before we proceed with the first presentation, I'd like to briefly hand you over to Jerry Allmark.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. What I'd like to do is take you further on in the programme today. I'll be facilitating the panel session on text training, and we've put together an expert panel for you, and I want to make the most of that today and get the best out of their time and yours. So what I'd like you to do is, as Terence said, if you go to the chat box and use the drop-down box to go to delegates and participants, and I'm sure that all of you have a burning question, comment, or something you'd like the panelists to elaborate on. So from now, if you could put those questions in, then we can make sure that we make the best use of our time and use the panelists to the best effect during that panel session later. So I look forward to seeing you then, and I'll hand you back to Terence. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. So I'd like to now move on to our first presentation. As you can see from the programme, our first presentation is from Everon, and I'd like to ask Tony Walker, the National Sales Manager, to now come on screen and share his presentation. You could put that in presentation mode, please, Tony. Tony, have you got your mic on?
There you go. Can you hear me now?
Excellent. Thank you, Tony. I'll let
Thanks,
you
Darren.
carry on with your presentation.
Good morning, everyone. As Terence said, my name's Tony Walker, National Sales Manager at Everon UK. And I'm here today to talk about Everon's wireless digital care and health solution. I know my colleague Darren did something earlier in the year, but I'm just going to give you a quick refresh and talk about two new developments. So for those who don't know, Everon are a Finnish company, but we have subsidiary companies in Sweden and in the UK. We've been in the UK since around 2008. One thing we do major on is we have our own R&D team of around 22 engineers, developing both hardware and software based in Finland. We're a growing business both in the Nordics and in the UK. We currently have around 1,100 systems live, 40,000 users, and the platform handles around 1 million alerts a month. So at the heart of our solution is the Lyra cloud-based platform, and that supports many different services that we provide as a company. Some of them reactive and some of them proactive. It's a secure platform, but it has an open API, which means we can share data with other stakeholders, and I'll talk more about that later. So on the reactive side, obviously we have a nurse call system and a warden call system. We have the ability to provide a dispersed unit, although that's not core for our business. We have a GPS device, the Vega watch, which I think some of you may be aware of. Within the platform, we handle the alerts and route the alerts to the various recipient points. And we can provide a staff security on site with the same solution. On the proactive side, and a lot of these services are new and will be introduced into the UK during the remainder of this year. But most of them are sort of Nordic solutions. We do camera monitoring in the Nordics. We do medical monitoring using Bluetooth devices that connect to our hubs. We have a digital presence sensor, which I've got a slide on later in the presentation. And all those feed an AI and a trend detection analysis tool that provide activity of daily living alerts and activity monitoring. We do have a keyless access system, which again, we use quite a lot in the Nordics. So the call system, as I've said already, it's a cloud-based platform. It's a secure, resilient infrastructure provided by Microsoft Azure. It's a fully scalable solution, and it provides the ability to do personalized, intelligent call routing. So every hub can have its own individual call routing. It is call center compatible and is compatible with the main alarm receiving center platforms. And because each hub connects individually, then there's no limitations on calls from a group living scheme. The only limitation you've got is the staff that you've got to handle the calls, either on site or in the alarm receiving center. Because it's cloud-based, we provide over-the-air updates of the latest software. So the system's always future-proofed and working on the latest software, and it's always on, which is how we can drive a lot of the proactive services. The hubs and the peripherals actually send a message every 10 minutes to the platform. And as I've said already, we have an open API for integration, so it is truly interoperable. The hubs themselves, they're wireless. By wireless, I mean we don't need any infrastructure within a scheme to drive the system. All we need is access to a power point within the room. It's easily programmed either over the air using the platform, or on site using simple keys at the hub level. There's 3 levels of connectivity. So the primary level is the GSM. So each hub contains a true roaming SIM and a powerful antenna to drive that SIM. But what we can do is, if there is a local Wi-Fi network, we can connect through the Wi-Fi network and use the GSM as the backup. Or if there's a local area network, there is an Ethernet point in the back of the hub, so we can connect using the local area network, and again use either the Wi-Fi or the GSM as a backup. We have I'm OK functionality built into every hub that can be turned on or off. And because it's a group living system, obviously we can interface into door entry systems and fire detection systems. The digital clock and LED reassurance light is delivered as standard, but that's user definable, so that can be turned off. And one thing we can do is we can give a scheme-wide location of an individual, and I'll describe how that works in a couple of slides' time. There's a quite easy method to check the GSM status of each hub, and again that can be easily done by the staff. And because it's wireless, we believe it's around half the cost to install than most wired systems. So what connectivity have we currently got? So obviously with the hub we have telecare peripherals and alert buttons. That's using 869 radio. We're currently working with an organization called Accurate, who have a smart mug for measuring liquid intake, and that connects Bluetooth to our hub and provides that information about standard intake and where there's a deterioration in liquid intake. Medical devices, this is used quite a lot in the Nordics, so we connect to Bluetooth medical devices, gather all that information and deliver that through the platform to various different stakeholders. As I mentioned earlier, we have a digital presence sensor. I've got a slide on that later on in the presentation. We can connect to access control systems, and we do have our own keyless access system that allows access to a room either using a fob, a tag, or an app on a mobile phone. We are working on a bed sensor that monitors sleep patterns and sleep conditions, and as I've said earlier, we integrate with access control systems wirelessly. So this is how the group, the site-wide location works. Obviously, this is a group living scheme. You've got a hub in every room, providing connectivity to a door entry system. Obviously, if the pendant's pressed in room 5, if Mr. Jones pressed his pendant in room 5, we know he's in room 5 because the pendant will connect to the hub in room 5. But in this scenario, Mr. Jones has wandered out into the corridor and is down near the kitchen. When the pendant's pressed there, what the system does is looks for the strongest signal and triangulates its position by deciding which hubs it can see. So in this scenario, the pendant can see the hub in room 4 and room 8. And if there was a hub in the communal area in the kitchen, it would pick that up as well, and it would suggest that that Mr. Jones is somewhere in the corridor outside room 4 and room 8. So that's how we provide a location on site. That would work on many floors. It actually works if Mr. Jones went to a scheme within your organization that had another Everon system in there, if you pressed this pendant there, it would connect to a hub on that scheme. Suggest it's Mr. Jones, but suggest it's in a different scheme. On site, calls are handled by the staff using the Everon mobile app. And this is free to the staff members. Obviously, off-site, it would go to the alarm receiving centre. These four pictures here show the view that a staff member would see. Obviously, there's a log on screen, but once the alarm comes in, it presents itself to all staff members on site at that time. As soon as one member of staff selects the call, then the call is closed down on the other phones. And obviously the staff member deals with the call, has the ability to add notes. But if during the call they decide they want assistance, they can easily request that by pressing the orange assistance button there, and that will present the call to the other staff members' phones immediately. Likewise, if they want to return the call because something else has cropped up, they can return the call to the other staff members quite easily by pressing the return to assigned. As I've said already, the Everon system is always on, and it's continuously monitoring the condition of the hubs and the peripherals, and providing information every 10 minutes of the status of those devices. That information presents itself on the Everon portal, and that portal is available to staff and management. We have a standard dashboard that shows the status of the connected devices, green being good, red being not connected, and amber being where there's an alert. And we find, as I say, we pick up information every 10 minutes of the condition of each peripheral and device. So just quickly, the Everon digital presence sensor. As I say, it's a camera that doesn't operate as a camera. What we do is we take the image and we pixelate the image and convert it to a stick person, as you can see there. It has a highly sensitive motion sensor, so we can pick up movement and map movement around the room. What this device does, it eliminates the need for several telecare devices with the one device. So the device can pick up falls and slumps. It can pick up activity deviations. It can detect changes in gait, but also can pick up on bed exit, room exit, or even exit into the bathroom. It's a standalone device that links to the management portal. It's not dependent on having an Oregon hub in the room, but you can use it along with an Oregon hub, and it's easy to use. The other thing we've recently launched is working with an organization called IoT Comms. We've developed something called the Everon Digital Bridge. And what this does, it provides a bridge for alerts and voice to UK alarm receiving centres. It's tried and tested technology. It receives calls as API events, converts them securely, and converts them to the required output protocol for the alarm receiving centre. We see this as a short-term solution to get people through the digital transition. But as I say, it's quite flexible. And our first install, we're actually converting digital messages through to an analog message because the alarm receiving centre hasn't been upgraded yet. So in summary, why choose Everon? It's inexpensive to install. We can do it with minimum disruption. It's easy to install and easy to maintain. It's flexible. As I say, every device can have its own personalized settings. It's digital. Everon have never sent an analog signal. It's completely digital, and there is no issue with the network being changed over. It's secure and it's future-proofed. So that's the end of the presentation. There's my contact details. Thank you very much, Terence.
Thank you very much, Tony, for that informative and detailed presentation. As I said earlier, the presentation will be on the UKTelehealthcare website if you want to review and then ask Tony questions later. There's details that are there on screen, and then we'll also share those with you at a later date. So thank you for the moment, Tony.
Okay, thanks.
So now I'd like to move on to our next presentation, and the next presentation comes from Care. And the presentation will be given by Laurie Fon-Jones, Regional Account Manager at Care. See you sharing your slides at the moment, and Laurie will be talking about an insight into how Care do telecare differently. I'd like to hand you over to Laurie now.
Oh, thank you very much, Terence. Yeah, nice to see you all this morning. Yeah, as Terence said, my name is Laurie Jones, and I am the Regional Account Manager for Care UK. I cover Wales and the northwest of England. And today I just want to give you kind of a short summary of an insight into how we do telecare differently. So for those of you that don't know Care, just to give you a little bit about our ethos, we believe that everyone's life can be improved by innovative solutions and better designs. And we pride ourselves on creating telecare that we would all want in our homes, you know, that kind of fits around our lives and the type of smart technologies that we're all kind of embracing, especially over the last year. So our technology is designed with everyone in mind across all walks of life, and our aim is to create solutions that genuinely improve the quality of life and make a difference into the lives of everyone that uses our equipment. So we strive to make the future better, and our team work tirelessly with customers. And again, that's something that we pride ourselves on, is working really closely with customers to understand solutions that are genuinely needed. And we've just gone through a series of focus groups actually with some customers across the UK in the development of some really new exciting equipment that we're working on as well. But today I'm going to speak to you about the Insight range. So I'm just going to focus on this range that was launched last year. And I'm going to talk about the contact, the chime and the flood. The temperature sensor isn't yet available, but really excited for the launch of that, because it's going to be not only kind of the temperature extreme detection, but also have some humidity detection built in as well. So that's one of the things that we're working on behind the scenes too. So I'm going to dive into just a bit more about what these do. I know some of you may have seen me presented before, and I've probably spoken about these at a high level, but today I want to go down into the features of each device to hopefully give you a better understanding of the kind of true capability of all this equipment. So the Contact is an innovative door entry and exit system. It's a wireless device which comprises of a contact and a detection device, and it has multiple modes. That means that we can manage a lot of things with just one device. It's really easy to configure. Everything is done on the device itself, so no extra kit is needed. And it's waterproof, so it can be used in and outdoors as well. So there's some modes built in. Mode 1 is the door open mode. Now, this is the most simple form of door monitoring. So an alert is raised as soon as the door opens, and it's ideal for the use both in the community and in supported living as well. So in the community, Mrs. Jones, it's always Mrs. Jones, maybe she's related to Mr. Jones in Tony's presentation, has been assessed as being at risk 24 hours a day. So carers do visit several times a day. So this mode would be normally used alongside the carer exit and entry mode, which I'll mention a little bit later. And that option allows the carers to enter and leave the house without raising an alert. But when Mrs. Jones opens the door, then that sends a call through to the monitoring centre. And in supported living, carers can use the on and off button if they're coming and going more frequently and need to be able to switch that feature off. And the contact can be positioned either outside or inside Mrs. Jones's property. Mode 2 is door open and closed, and this feature works alongside the time windows feature on dispersed alarms, meaning that Mrs. Jones' door can be monitored during specific times, normally at night time, but that could be at any time during the day. But if Mrs. Jones has dementia and she's possibly, confusing her night and daytime, she may be trying to leave the house at, early hours in the morning. So we can just monitor during that type of nighttime period. So outside of these times, the door can be used without raising an alert. Now, this mode is also compatible with virtual property exit function, which works in conjunction with a PIR movement sensor, which allows Mrs. Jones to leave the house for a short period of time, maybe to put the bins out, even pop to the shops, maybe having a chat with Mrs. Roberts across the wall. And it means that it won't raise an alert during that time, as long as Mrs. Jones returns within, the specified time frame that you've programmed the device to monitor. So both these functions are probably more useful when Mrs. Jones lives on her own out in the community, but it can definitely be applied to supported in residential living as well. And what we've tried to do with our solutions is to try and kind of manage as many situations as we can, as simply as we can, so that our customers and the people that they can support can be supported in the most person-centered and right way for themselves. So modes 3 and 4 are the door still open modes. So Mrs. Jones opens the door and leaves it open, but she doesn't leave the house. The alarm goes through to the monitoring centre. And with the existing technology, Mrs. Jones could leave the house again without raising an alert, so she's at risk. So in that case, the call handler would either have to seek reassurance from Mrs. Jones that she has closed the door, or to be sure that she has, they might need to call somebody out to physically go to the home and check. With this feature, so with the door still open mode, the call handler can confidently close down the call, knowing that the contact will activate again, either in 45 seconds or 2 minutes, if the door has still been left open. And that call will actually present differently than the first call. So they'll be able to identify that it is a door still open alert. Now modes 5 and 6 are the doors open for a set period of time. So Mrs. Jones may leave the door open, maybe to get a bit of fresh air, maybe she has a faulty door, maybe it's because she's becoming forgetful. And that could leave her at risk of an intruder coming in, or if she does leave the house, she could be at risk of a call not going through to the monitoring centre. So these modes 5 and 6, allow us to send an alert through if the door has been left open for either 2 minutes or 10 minutes, and that will go through to the monitoring centre after that period of time. Now, the carer exit and entry mode, which I mentioned earlier, is ideal for allowing carers to enter and exit the property without raising a call and having to run over to the disperse unit to cancel the call going through to the monitoring centre. So all the carer has to do is to press the large button on the device, either 15 seconds before or after opening the door, and that will stop the call going through to the monitoring centre, which reduces, false calls going through. It's also, some find it better than kind of turning it on and off, because there's always that risk, especially if you've got multiple carers coming in during the day, that if the device is switched off, that it isn't turned back on again. And we've got the ability to disable that function as well if the on and off button needs to be switched off, but it's there if you need it. And finally, we have the installer test function, which is a really handy feature for installers because there are so many different types of doors. This kind of allows, using LED indication, to see that the magnet and the device itself are close enough, so that will kind of show a light to indicate, yep, that's perfect for installing it. So some frames stick out further than the doors and vice versa. So we can also create, we've got magnet castings available to help kind of build out the magnets as well, to ensure that you can kind of get it level with the contact. But the typical distance between the contact and the magnet working is about 20 millimeters. So hopefully you can see that the contact is a more comprehensive solution, but really simple. As I said, it's all programmed on that one device, allowing you to do a little bit more, hopefully a lot more with your door contacts, and yeah, really apply it to the needs of the individual that you're monitoring. Now moving over to the chime. So the chime is a simple to use place anywhere button. Again, it's got that compact wireless design, which hopefully kind of looks like the technology that we'd all be quite comfortable in our home. And it's really multi-purpose, so it can be used as a bogus caller alarm, an alternative to a pendant, a nurse call button, or even a doorbell. So using this as a bogus caller alarm, so Mrs. Jones is assessed at being at risk of bogus callers visiting her home. So when the button is pressed, this can send a silent alarm through to the monitoring centre. And as most of you will be aware, all the calls are recorded, so that can be used in evidence. And if it's assessed as being needed, the monitoring centre can contact the police. On the other hand, it might be that, an audible alarm could be enough to scare bogus callers away. So the disperse unit can be programmed to be audible if needed as well. Now, great story that one of my colleagues, Kevin, was shared by his customer, was where they used the bogus caller, and the resident did need to trigger a call because he was being conned by someone that was trying to sell him some dodgy roof tiles. Now, he pressed the button, took this man into his living room, kept him talking, and soon after the doorbell went, and this guy, trying to appear as if he was doing the resident a favour, said, "Don't worry, I'll get it." And he took himself to the door and answered the door to the police, who followed to arrest him. So yeah, a great example of a real life impact that using the chime as a bogus caller can have. It can also be used as a doorbell, and we've used this in settings like residential homes for people with learning disabilities. Now, as the chime is waterproof, it can be used outdoors, so it can replace the existing doorbell. And in settings where, the buzz pager, which receives all of our devices locally, is already being used by staff to monitor their telecare devices, you can also program the chime to send calls as a doorbell through to that device as well. So that might be preferable than having an audible doorbell, because maybe that could upset residents, and there's also a risk of maybe them answering the door and so on. So it'll just be the staff that are aware of the call coming through. And finally, it can be used as a nurse call or just a replacement for a personal trigger. So this can just send a call through to our buzz pager or to a disperse unit. And it could be used as an alternative to a pendant for, when you have people who may not like to wear the pendant or may not remember to have the pendant. You could have this fixed at points such as next to the chair that they sit in, or in the shower, or, it could just be something that they carry around with them. And we also have magnetic backing plates as well, which means that you could have the different plates in different rooms. You could have one in the shower, one next to the chair that somebody sits in, one next to the dining table. And the device itself can be moved around as the resident moves from room to room, which is a really cost-effective way of managing the risk, because it means that you only need one device, just multiple magnetic backings in multiple locations. Finally, the flood, which kind of, does what it says on the tin, but it's a really discreet and effective way of detecting leaks and floods. Again, it's got that sleek, compact design, and it's waterproof and has a range of up to 500 metres. So the flood can be placed anywhere that there's a risk of leaks or taps being left on, which is usually the bathroom, kitchen, possibly the utility room. And Mrs. Jones, God love her, is forgetful, and sometimes she forgets that she's filling the bath and her overflow isn't working correctly, and she has flooded the bathroom a few times. So you place the flood in a discreet position on the floor beside the bath, which will alert the dispersed unit if the bath overflows. And the flood is waterproof too, meaning that it does not need to be replaced if it is exposed to a genuine flood, so it can be used time and time again. So that's it. That's just a really small insight into how we do telecare differently. And I'm only scratching the surface of our portfolio and all the equipment that we've currently got in development as well. So if you'd like to arrange a demonstration of the products that I've discussed today, or you want to know more about what we have to offer and the things that we're working on behind the scenes, then please get in touch. I look forward to meeting you.
Thank you very much, Laurie. Thank you for that detailed presentation on the insights on how telecare is done differently at Care. no questions for you at the moment, but we'll forward your details on to the delegates. And thank you for that. Now we'd like to move on to our next presentation. And our next presentation is from Legrand, and the presenter will be Garrick Field, who is the Senior Business Development Manager at Legrand. So you could start your presentation, thank you. And I'd like to...
Well, thank you, Terence, for that introduction. I'm Garrick Field, the Senior Business Development Manager for Legrand Assisted Living and Healthcare, and I'm here to talk today about bringing sheltered housing beyond the digital horizon. So Legrand Assisted Living and Healthcare are made up of 5 brands that you can see on the screen. We've got Neat, Intervox, Aidcore, John Tech and Tyne-Tech. The products that I'm going to be focusing on today are is the Tyne-Tech brand. And some of you that may know me from past exploits will know me probably as Garrick from Tyne-Tech. But do be aware that Legrand Assisted Living and Healthcare are made up of these multiple brands as well. So the first thing to cover really is, what is the digital horizon? What do we mean when we say that? Hopefully, it's no secret that there is a bit of a revolution in the telecommunications industry. It's changing, and the traditional analog PSTN lines are being replaced with digital next generation networks. PSTN standing for, as you can see on the screen there, Public Switch Telephony Network. I like to leave that bit of trivia on the screen. 1, because I used to be a teacher and I can't help myself. And 2, because I think it just emphasises quite how old our infrastructure is in this country. You know, this infrastructure is back from a time when somebody literally used to connect your call with a wire, you know, connecting you now. So Ofcom have mandated that this old and outdated infrastructure needs to be updated by 2025. As you can see on the screen there, I provided some information by way of a website that you can go at your leisure to get a little bit more information about this. And effectively, calls will be no longer transferred using copper cable. They will instead be transferred using broadband, the internet, VoIP, which is voice over IP. So how does that affect you, our customers? Well, current analog communication protocols, TT92 and BS8521, aren't designed to work on these new networks. And what we found is that the older protocols can fail when attempting to connect through on a digital line. Thankfully, there is a digital protocol that's being developed for sheltered housing. As you can see there, it's BS8521-2. But it means that your existing stock will need equipment that can speak that digital protocol. And I've got a slide in a second discussing the digital protocol and a bit more information. So what have we been doing at Legrand? Well, we've obviously embarked on a bit of a substantial R&D program to transition our equipment from analog to digital. We're leading on the development of new European-wide standards, and you can see them on the screen there: EN 300-220, EN 50134, TS 50134-9, and BS 8521-2. We've been heavily involved in the Scottish Digital Pathfinder and Test of Change projects. These are really preliminary projects that have been at the forefront of digital communication across the country. And we've also developed and launched a white paper in partnership with the Good Governance Institute. And again, I provided a link there if that's of interest, entitled Unleashing the Digital Premium. I recommend that you read that. It's a great paper, and there's lots of useful information in terms of, well, really what I'm going to be focusing on in this presentation. We work in partnership with our customers to ensure that you're digitally ready when you want to be digitally ready. And free consultation is available on request in this regard. We've developed systems to allow our customers to safely transition from analog to digital platforms, and really want to use these systems to realise the benefits of digital, be they service efficiencies, improved performances, or new transformative services such as you can see there, assets management, remote access and diagnostics, security, safety, things that we can now do under the new digital infrastructure. So why is regulation important? What's the BS 8521-2 and what have you? What are you talking about here? BS 8521-2 is effectively a language. It's a language that has been developed to communicate on digital lines. So it's also known as the No IP protocol. As you can see, it's another name for it. I prefer to use the British standard name, 8521-2, and it was published last year in April. There is also another standard of communication called TS 50134-9. That's also known as SCAPE. A lot of organisations will refer to it as SCAPE. It's not exactly the same as SCAPE. It's a slight tweak. It's very similar to the SCAPE protocol. It's been enhanced by Senelec and it was published in 2018. These protocols are languages, is the way I like to describe them, that allow your monitoring centre, your control centre, to communicate with the system. And both of these have been designed to allow digital communication. In the case of BS 8521-2, that's been designed for sheltered housing systems, so that's the focus of this presentation. And TS 50134-9 has been developed specifically for dispersed alarm equipment, so individual alarms. Both of these have been developed to be interoperable. They're not owned by Legrand or any other manufacturer. They're British standards, so they're open standards or technical standards in the case of the TS. They offer benefits such as compatibility, flexibility, future-proofing. They'll work post-2025. And all UK tech manufacturers and industry bodies support these protocols, regardless of whether it's Legrand or another. Know that any of our equipment that I'll be discussing today is fully compliant with BS 8521-2 in the case of group living, which is the focus again, or TS 50134-9 in the case of dispersed alarms. Okay. So what's changed in terms of group living? What developments have we seen in the marketplace? I'm not going to go through all of these, and I'm sure that you customers know them better than myself, to be quite honest with you. But the key one really is the third one along at the top there. Infrastructures are changing. So the equipment that works on those infrastructures needs to change to suit. Furthermore, and this is something that I see very regularly on my visits, there are changes in how schemes are being managed. Very rarely do I find a scheme that has a site manager on it 24/7 or even 9 to 5. Typically now you'll have one site manager that manages multiple schemes, and that means there's a different way of working, and the kit should accommodate that and support it rather than become a hindrance. Obviously you want to spend new money on future-proof technology, but you still need to maintain the level of service and peace of mind and security that your residents have come to expect. So from that, there are some key considerations for sheltered housing, and this was used in development of the product that I'm going to talk about shortly. You want to protect your past investments. There might be different considerations if it's a new build or if it's a refurbishment environment. The cabling in the infrastructure. Do you have the funds to replace all the cable? Would you want to if you did? What are the capabilities of your residents? What are their expectations? The system should be simple to use. And I mentioned earlier, who's managing the scheme and from where are they managing the scheme? You know, COVID has introduced us to this remote working world. Site managers are using that also. How are you going to purchase the equipment? Are you going to go through a framework? Are you going to purchase direct? Various options available there. Obviously, critical connectivity, open protocols, standards compliance are key. You want the system to be fully standards compliant, as is security and interoperability. And of course, budgets. I don't think there's much more important than budgets. So the product we developed is Advent XT2. This is a natively digital sheltered housing system. So it's designed from the ground up to be digital and to work in a digital environment. But it is a hybrid system, so it'll work both in a digital world and in an analog world. The beauty of that is, of course, you can choose when you go digital. The choice is yours rather than anybody forcing you through a certain route. You can use the existing cable infrastructure in 99.9% of cases. The speed of connection is significantly faster. We can have multiple speech paths. There is screen-based control, as you can no doubt see on the presentation there. And it's standards driven and fully compliant with all of the standards referenced prior. The system is like a platform to build upon. You can add to it devices as you see fit and as your residents require them, depending on their needs. And it's transformational. You'll see why probably on this slide. So some of the enhanced features and functions of the system. In terms of resident-centered functionality, you can have personalized volume settings for each individual resident, depending on their, obviously, capacity to hear. You can have flexible call routing by flat and device type, and of course by time. So for example, if you've got a specific team that deal with falls, you can have all the falls calls go through to that specific team. If you've got a specific team that might deal with a certain wing of your sites, perhaps that wing has got many residents that have got quite high needs, perhaps dementia, then again you can route all of those calls from that particular wing to certain handsets and to those staff. And there's also an I'm OK daily check. You can leave messages on the intercom. So if somebody's had a delivery and it's been accepted, the site manager could leave a message informing the resident of this. They could also leave a message if they had a visitor and they weren't in to receive the visitor. It's got onboard Bluetooth, so we can link a number of Bluetooth devices to the system and to the intercoms. You've got progressive privacy on your door entry. And very soon we'll have cloud capabilities as well, which will enable remote management, remote diagnostics, and will enable the system and indeed what you can get out of the system to be data well. So currently I've spoken about just getting to the digital horizon, but I've not really discussed much about what happens after the fact. Well, traditionally, I think it's fair to say that the equipment has focused much more on reaction than it has prevention. A device goes off, somebody goes out to try and solve the issue or help the person that's in need. We're trying to, what this equipment will allow you to do is to be a lot more preventative and predictive in terms of the needs of the individual. You might be able to prevent a fall is going to happen before it ever happens. You might be able to stop the fall happening, obviously, if you've got this information. I don't think it's a secret that, or it's going to be a surprise to anyone to say that I think services now are expected to deliver more for less. Funding seems to be shrinking generally, and yet the demand is increasing. We know there are more old people, and that number is growing and growing and growing. So I think the equipment needs to support you to be able to do that. Really looking to integrate housing, social care and health with our product by allowing you to add different devices as required to blend into these different organisational needs. And mixing the essential and the desirable as well. So the essential, of course, being the safety critical connectivity, ensuring that it works every time, meeting the standards. But then there might be some desirable requirements that aren't traditionally safety critical, but might provide massive benefits to your organisation, such as asset management, for example. The kit allows you to create person-centred solutions, and indeed, the more digital the equipment, the more person-centred the solutions can be, because all of the data that's collected on the individual can be sent somewhere and then verified. Effectively allowing someone to age in place comfortably is the aim, of course, of all of this equipment. And as you can see on the right of the screen there, that's the white paper that I discussed earlier, the Unleashing the Digital Premium. So why Legrand? Just a quick summary about Legrand Assisted Living and Healthcare, if you're not already aware of us. So we're global specialists in digital infrastructures. We're a multi-billion, 8 billion, I believe now, euro business. John Tech and Time Tech have got a combined experience, over 70 years of combined experience. Obviously, we'll give you some extensive support tailored to your needs, whether that's my resource, whether that's any of my colleagues' resources, a marketing resource. We have our own supply, install and maintenance services, or you can elect to use our national network of approved partner and otherwise installers. We can support you with regards to digital planning and drawing. If there's any drawings that need marking up, we can support you in that regard. And of course, I mentioned this briefly earlier, but you can have bespoke financial packages to suit your organisation if you wish to go through a framework. We're on the vast majority of them. We have a person-centred technology roadmap that's future-proofed end-to-end, and of course will meet all of the standards that hopefully allow us to be a trusted technology partner. So that's it from me. There are our websites. I'll send my details through in due course. Have we had some questions, it looks like, Terence? I've seen the chat bubbles illuminated.
There are a couple of questions, but they were for the previous presentation.
No problem.
Can you see something different?
No problem.
No,
I didn't see the questions, of course. It's no bother.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation, Garrett. Thank you for now then. As Garrett just said, I saw a question coming quite late from Robin, and Larry has answered that. So thank you for doing that. And now I'd like to move on to our final presentation today. And the final presentation is from Chubb. Charlotte Rathbone, who is the Key Account Manager, will be presenting the new 4G system. I see the presentation started. I'd like to hand you over to Charlotte.
Morning, everyone, or afternoon. I think we're not far off afternoon now. Thank you very much to Terence, Sherry and Julia for putting on one of these events. I did the last one a few weeks ago, and they really are really beautiful events. So I'm here today to talk about Chubb Community Care and our sort of digital roadmap. We do work in multiple arenas. We do nurse call, we do water call, we do monitoring platforms as well. But today I'm going to be showcasing our dispersed alarm unit. So a little bit of background, and I've got to say Garrett gave a great overview in his presentation, but similar to what he was saying, I'm sure everybody is already very aware that BT is going to be changing the way it provides its telephone services to UK customers. And we're going to be moving over from what has been an analogue network for many years to digital technology. Now, the timeline is for all customers to be using a full digital solution by 2025. And what is quite interesting is even with COVID and pandemics, lockdowns and everything like that, that hasn't been delayed at all. So as far as we're aware, that is still the date. And obviously it is going to impact and continue to impact our industry, telecare industry. As we know, all the dispersed alarm units out there, I think it's close to 1 million in the UK. The majority of them connect via an analogue phone line. Our warden call schemes dial off on analogue phone lines as well. So there is going to be an impact. We are already starting to see failures, and I'm sure if we've got service providers on the call, they too have started to see some failures of trying to use old analogue equipment on digital phone work. We've taken quite a lot of guidance from Sweden and the Nordic countries because they transferred over to digital in 2007. Their recommendation that hybrid solutions are not effective. So the idea that you can use this old analogue equipment on new digital networks by plugging in gateways and 88 and things like that, it's not reliable. So our recommendation is to move over to a digital enabled alarm unit. And this is our digital enabled alarm unit. So this is the Care Unity Digital. It has now officially launched. We have stock in and we have been shipping these out to our customers for a couple of weeks. So you can see at its heart, it is still a familiar dispersed alarm unit. It's still got the big buttons on there, the speaker, the microphone, etc. And the thing that I really love about this unit, and for me, it's a real selling point to our service providers at the moment, is the fact that for now, it can still connect via analogue, just in the way that you currently deploy your alarm unit. So when we designed this unit, there were two real key things that we sort of kept in mind, really. The first one was reducing risk, because at the end of the day, for all bells and whistles, this is potentially a life-saving piece of equipment, and we want to ensure that that call is going to go through. And the second thing was to make the transition as easy as possible for our customers. We're under no illusion that this digital transition is going to be expensive for service providers, and also, a lot of hassle and a lot of planning is going to place. So we tried to make it as simple as possible. So in terms of reducing risk, the Care Unity Digital can communicate over multiple pathways. So it's got Ethernet in there. It's got 4G, 3G and 2G via GSM. It's still got, as I said, the old analog PSTN connection while the copper network, while the analog service is available. And it's even got the ability to send messages via SMS as well. The idea behind this being that if either one or any of these become compromised, you're still going to get that message through. It's got loads of options to really reduce the risk. When we are communicating digitally, it uses the escape protocol. And again, the reason that we chose to employ that one is because we took a lot of learning from the Nordic countries, and that's what they use. Also, it was one of the recommended ones by the TSA as well. It's got crystal clear two-way audio. That is one of the things that we have seen an improvement on our previous unit. And it's got remote programming. Now, obviously, I said about how we're trying to make this a simpler product and some real efficiencies for our service providers, our customers. And the one real big efficiency that's going to be gained is by using remote programming. And I always think that digital, for a lot of service providers, is just a big headache. And it just feels like something that somebody invented one day to keep everyone really busy and cost everybody a fortune. And all of a sudden, we're going to turn that off and make everybody go digital. But actually, what does come with digital is a lot of opportunity. And remote programming is, to me, the real big thing. And hopefully the days of engineers driving, 2 hours or whatever to supply pendants to people are now going to be long behind us, because a pendant can be programmed up remotely in an office and popped in the post to a resident already and working. We've got two options for programming remotely. There is a user web portal, but we also have an MP tool, which can be connected to the unit via a USB connection. If you are on site somewhere that doesn't have internet connection, you can still program up the unit. And actually, the unit's also got the ability to receive programming instructions via SMS and monitoring center as well. Again, in terms of making this as simple a transition as possible, we've got some flexible buying options, and they come in sort of two forms, really. First and foremost, you can rent the unit or you can buy the unit. We've got some great different ways to try and make it as easy as possible. But also, we've got flexible buying options in terms of how you actually buy the unit itself. So we've put a lot of work into this unit to make it completely backward compatible with our full range of 869 megahertz telecare. So all the sensors that we currently supply can be used with this unit. So what that means is that if you have already got pendants, for example, on site, or you've already got pendants and you're on a replacement a couple of months ago, then you can buy the unit without a pendant. Now, although that might not be a huge saving, it might be what, £15, £20 per unit. If you've got to replace 2,000 units across your estate, it's going to add up. And that's just another way that we've tried to make it as sort of as simple as possible. We are offering a managed end-to-end roaming SIM card solution. You can buy the unit with or without a SIM card. You've already got a supplier set up. If you already have a solution in place, then that's absolutely fine. If you want our help with it, then we can provide the SIM card as well. The unit comes with a greater than 24 hours backup battery and also 24-month warranty, which is standard. Some of the features and benefits, it's got IMO pay function. So again, as Garrett mentioned before, trying to get into this proactive monitoring. At the moment, we are so reactive. If someone has an incident, it puts an alarm through, but let's try and prevent the alarms going through in the first place. It's got an app that comes with the unit, and that's really good for informal carers and local alarm monitoring. So say you've got husband and wife, and husband cares for wife. Husband, if you've got a smartphone, you can pop the app on the phone, and he can use the app to monitor any sensors that his wife might have locally. We've got some scheduled alarms on there for wanderer, door exit, like Larry was saying, and bed exit solutions. And again, it's so easy to set up because now you go into a portal and put in whatever times you want to, these sensors to be monitored. There's also a really nice dashboard on the portal, and you can see an overview of your whole estate of unit and different fault statuses and things like that. We've got configurable call type reporting. So again, as Gary said on their system, you can set the unit up to send different alarm types to different members of staff or via different methods. There's audible fault status messages. I really like this one. So if your unit is showing a fault status, If you hold and press the green button, it actually announces what the issue is. So really good for troubleshooting. And it's also got the ability for the control centre to dial into the unit and open each channel with absolutely no interaction from the resident. So if you were to have a resident, for example, that for whatever reason couldn't press their pendant, couldn't get to the unit to accept a call, the control centre can actually dial into it and open two-way speech. And there is a PIN number as well for security. You won't have all and sundry dialing into the unit. So the big question for us was why we've gone with a 4G unit. And it's something that we think is a real selling point for this unit and something that was really, really critical to us in the design stage. We're already starting to see global sensor activity on 2G and 3G networks. And there's some dates that we were given. Congestion levels on 4G is increasing, obviously, as more and more of us use this kind of technology. If additional spectrum is not made available by the regulators, it's going to have to be reformed from 2G and 3G. Cellular networks, they're going to stop spending on 2G and 3G as it becomes more and more obsolete. And, you know, if these networks come to the end of their life, they need expenditure and things like that, we're going to start seeing less investment in those networks. So for us, the safe option is to invest in 4G. Again, going back to our customer, in the large the service providers, this is going to be a big piece of work for you and an expensive piece of work as well. And what we don't want is for you to have to do this any quicker again than what you need to. So we want to future-proof this unit, give you the current technology that we believe is going to last for the longest amount of time. So you're covered for as long as possible, basically. There was an outage about 3 or 4 weeks ago on Saturday on one of the digital networks. Not one that we use actually, but one of the ones that is out there. And 4G was restored in 2 hours, 3G was restored in 7 hours. So we're already starting to see that 4G is the priority. So this here is a little schematic of how we see the unit being connected. And obviously I've sent out the slides, so I know this is a lot of information to take in, but just really briefly, this is now in a digital world. So analog's gone, we're post 2025. And this is how we'd like to see the unit connected in the resident's home. And this unit has a SIM card in it. So 2G, 3G or 4G, whatever is the best in that particular area, got a SIM card installed in the unit. It's also plugged in to the resident's home broadband. If either one of those pathways becomes compromised, there's a network outage, broadband goes down, remember broadband just needs power, power cut or something, you've still got the ability for a call to go through. You've got a redundancy pathway there. That's how we'd like to see it ideally. However, if you have residents that don't have broadband or don't want SIM cards or whatever, you can use it as one or the other. And here it is set up as just a plain GSM unit and it'll work fine. So our proposed SIM offering, like I say, you can take the units with a SIM or without a SIM, whatever your preference is. If you do want to get a SIM card from us, we are offering a machine-to-machine roaming SIM card solution, and we are working alongside Mobius. They proactively monitor the network, so they are constantly looking out for issues and things like that. These aren't the sort of SIM cards that you would go down the high street and buy for your personal mobile phone. These are SIM cards that are for this sort of use. So the way that we would sell the SIM cards is you would buy them up front, a 24-month contract, and there would be a monthly bundle that would include 5 minutes of voice and 50 gigabytes of data per user per month. Might not sound like a lot, but the great thing is this data and voice is going to be pooled across your whole SIM estate. So we all know that we have some residents that maybe press the button 10 times a day, but for every one of those, there's probably 50 residents that never use it, and that should level out, and that the low users should mitigate any sort of high usage. So again, you can buy it with your initial order, you can buy them separately later on, or you can provide your own SIM card. It's absolutely not a problem at all, whatever your preference is. So telecare, we have a huge range of telecare centres, and we have them all available on next day delivery. We have a dedicated telecare helpline that you can ring up 9 to 5 Monday to Friday to help you with installation. And as I've said already, our range of 869 megahertz telecare is compatible with the Care Unity Digital. We've engineered the Care Unity Digital to be fully backward compatible with existing telecare. So For our customers that spent, 30, 40, 50,000 pounds with us last year on smoke detectors, heat detectors, they don't have to rebuy that. And that's just another way we've tried to make the transition as simple as possible. The other nice thing is that this telecare is used across the full spectrum of Chubb products. So our nurse call system, our warding cord system, our digital alarm unit, they all use the same equipment. So in terms of stock holding and staff training, it's nice and simple because it's across the board. So not only is the Verso protocol, our current protocol, available to the UK Unity Digital, we're also bringing out a new protocol, which is our Verso Plus protocol. And this is the new pendant. So if you buy a unit from us with a pendant, and like I say, they are available with or without, but if you do choose to buy a unit with a pendant, this is the pendant that you will get. And it comes as standard with neck, wrist, strap, but also a really nice rubber case, which you can see on the far right of the screen, which is called a handicap cover. And that actually helps people with dexterity issues to press the pendant and to raise an alarm. So as standard, these pendants have up to 400 meters line of sight range. The current pendants that we sell, we say up to 100 meters. So already there's some huge advantages with this new technology, and you can see, 4 times the coverage. Up to 6 years battery life, which again is a big improvement on our current product, and it's waterproof as standard, so IP67 waterproof. We're also going to be launching a new Chubb Verso pendant that's compatible with our current range as well, that's going to have some of these benefits with it, so the IP67 rating and the improved range of battery life as well. So again, you can see the sort of opportunities that digital's bringing, some really nice bits and pieces that we're going to be, bringing over the next few years. The big word that the TSA are sort of speaking about at the moment is the interoperability. Now, we can supply our Chubb Universal Transmitter Radio Module, and that will allow you to connect virtually any third-party equipment to our whole range of products, including the Care Unity and the Care Unity Digital. And we already use third-party equipment. We use Alertip and the Telhoff. These people are experts in their field. We aren't experts in epilepsy centres, for example, and we're happy to use their products and to help them to connect things like that to our system. The Care Unity Digital can also be used with a really wide range of core monitoring platforms. Obviously, I said at the beginning of the call, we do have our own care control that handles calls digitally, but it can be used with any digitally ready monitoring centre that uses Escape, or indeed, in the time being, while it's available, it can connect via BS8521 to Android systems as well. And we have already done some testing on the innovation programme, and we have tested into the UMO platform successfully. So in summary, this is our new unit. It's immediately available. It's got multiple communication pathways to really reduce risk and to make sure that call gets through. We're future-proofing as much as possible with 4G technology. You've got the benefits of remote programming. It's completely backwards compatible with all our current range of telecare, and we've got some flexible buying options there. So with or without pendant, with or without SIM card, and we've also got purchase or lease as well. So we've really tried to make it as easy as possible and a simple transition for our customers. There's my details at the bottom. We've got test units available to go. So if you do want to have a sample unit, or you want to speak about pricing or anything, please do not hesitate to get in touch. And thank you very much, everybody, for listening.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you for your presentation. Again, Charlotte's details will be shared on screen now and later on if you have any questions. Apologies for the sound during that presentation. I think you managed to catch everything that Charlotte was presenting and talking through. Again, apologies for the poor sound quality. So thank you to all the presenters, Tony, Larry, Garrick and Charlotte. And we'll now like to move on to the second part of our event, which is a panel discussion on text training. So I'd like to hand you over to Jerry or Mark, and I'd like the panelists, if they could all start their videos, please.
Thanks a lot, Terence. Thank you to all the presenters from this morning. Good afternoon, everyone. And I just seem to have disappeared from my screen, so I'm not quite sure what's happened there. Let me try something else.
You turned into a magician, Jerry.
I have.
There we go. You just needed a puff of smoke to come up behind you there.
It was just my opening trick. Welcome, panelists. Thank you very much for joining us today. So this session will be for the next approximately 40 minutes or so. It's your opportunity as delegates to ask the panel any questions relating to training, and we've got a wide range of expertise today. So you can do that in two ways. You can raise questions through the chat box if you like. Alternatively, if you want to raise your hand, Julia will let you in to ask the questions directly to the panelists. What I'd like to do is give the panelists a couple of minutes each just to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their organisations. So just very basically in 2 minutes, a little bit about yourselves and your organisation. So if I could start with you, please, Melanie.
Sorry, is that all right? Hello.
Hi, Maggie.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting to hear all those presentations. I'm an occupational therapist by profession, and I am a special advisor to the European Committee of Occupational Therapists, especially dealing with technology of various forms. I'm a board member of the UKTG. That was an organization, well, it is an organization which was formed in 2010 by the people in Brussels, because we had been part of a 6-nation project about technology in the community. And at the end of it, Brussels said, well, what you've shown is that people don't talk to each other. I'm afraid we could still say people don't talk to each other, and we could say UKTG has failed. The concept was and is that UKTG would encourage exchange by a cross-sector group of people. It would help with better understanding and education in these areas, and that is what we are trying to do. It's excellent to be invited today and have the opportunity to talk about these topics. In our work, we work with governments in various places. We have regular webinars and a newsletter, and if anybody wants to be part of that, they're very welcome.
Thank you, Maggie. Can I hand you over to Melanie, please, to introduce yourself? Thank you, Melanie.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks, Melanie.
My sound quality, I keep dropping in and out, so apologies if I suddenly disappear. My name is Melanie Poyser, and I'm from the DLF, the Disabled Living Foundation. Can you hear me very well?
Yes.
Yeah, good, okay. So I am the partnership manager for London and the South East of England, and our charity's been around for 50 years. And the main ethos of our charity is to provide information and advice and training to the professionals and also the general public about equipment solutions that will help people to live safely and more independently in their own homes and to achieve better quality of life and well-being. We have several different services and products that we actually produce within the charity. We're mainly well known for trusted assessor training. And we also have our online assessment tool, ArcSara, and also ProAssist, which is relatively new, as well as our website called Living Made Easy, where a lot of the products we've heard about today can be featured if people do need to find information and advice about technology That's the place to really go to find out, and we try to utilise that service for professionals, especially local authorities and anyone who really needs any kind of technology-enabled care.
Thank you, Melanie. Would you like to follow up on that, David?
Yes, thanks very much. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, thank you, David.
Okay, it has to happen somewhere. My laptop went into meltdown, so I'm now on my phone. So hopefully things look all right to you. Okay, so my name's David Asquith. I'm the Partnerships Manager for DLF. I cover the North Midlands, which really is the North and the Midlands rather, which is from Birmingham right up to the Scottish borders. And Melanie's covered a comprehensive overview of DLF, so I'll just add some comments and consolidate some others. So the charity, DLF, is really a charity within a charity. So we're part of Shore Trust that employs 3,000 people. So it's nice to be part of a big family, but obviously we don't have their resources. DLF's aim and mission really is to reach 5 million people by 2022 with our impartial advice, information and training on equipment for daily living. And I'll just talk a little bit around income and how we survive, because we're non-profit. So we offer a free range of services, like Melanie said, to the public, as well as subscribe services to organisations. We rely on income generated from our subscription services, which is ploughed back into the charity. A significant amount coming from local authorities who purchase training courses through our trusted assessor framework, and a customised online guided advice tool called Asara that's part of the Living Made Easy programme. With this income, we invest in keeping all our products and services fresh and modern, investing heavily into flexible technology that keeps our applications transparent and mobile responsive. And this integrates into wider platforms and reaches more people, which we're all about. This modernisation helps more service users to gain access to innovative assistive technology applications, like assistive technology products that sit on our Living Made Easy website. And this helps older and disabled people to live independently and maintain their chosen lifestyle. Thanks very much.
Thank you, David. So I'd like to welcome our second guest panelist today. So I'd like to hand over to Annette, if you could tell us a little about your organisation and yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. So I'm Annette Allmark, and I'm from BCS, which is the Chartered Institute for IT. BCS is a professional body. We have a membership of about 60,000 members, mainly in the UK, but also internationally. And our purpose is to really promote the education of IT and digital literacy and make sure that IT is good for society. So the Institute has a number of different roles. We look at the sort of whole lifelong learning piece around digital. So we work with schools. We also have a number of branches that focus on very important areas such as ethics, diversity and accessibility in relation to digital. So that's the Institute side. We also have a learning and development subsidiary, and that's where I fit in. And we're an Ofqual registered awarding body, and we're also an ESFA approved endpoint assessment organisation for apprenticeships. So I'm the head of apprenticeships and lead the endpoint assessment organisation. And we have assessed about 12,000 digital apprentices over the last few years, covering a wide range of areas in terms of software, network, infrastructure, digital marketing, cyber. It's quite an exciting area. During COVID, we've seen sectors and businesses that probably had digital transformation sort of relatively low on their priority list or had it a sort of number of years ahead to plan for it, moving very, very quickly and having to turn to digital, and hearing some of that in the presentations earlier on as well. And it's been a great time for apprenticeships, but also a lot of new things coming out and a lot of new areas in relation to the skills that are needed. So more companies focusing on training, and really looking forward to having the discussion with the rest of the panel in a moment. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Annette. So next I'd like to move on to Richard. Richard is one of our long-standing supplier members. And yes, thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Jerry. My name's Richard Bailey. I'm the country manager for the UK and Ireland for Telealarm Europe. Telealarm is a leading supplier of assistive technology products throughout Europe. The company was founded in 1956, so before my time. Our customers are local authorities, housing associations and private companies. And we developed our first telecare device in 1985. So I was here, but I was 10 years old, so I wasn't involved. We have a wealth of experience in this market. We launched our first digital telecare device in 2010 when we were part of the Bosch Healthcare Group, which is where I met Jerry and we worked together. We sell over around about 10,000 digital telecare devices in the UK and Ireland per year. There was an interesting presentation by Care that the Care products are available with our RF protocol. So if you are using our products, the Care fits in quite nicely. At Telealarm, we're really passionate about providing a high level of support and training for our customers. So there's 3 members of our team in the UK. We have a combined technical experience of over 70 years. And this year I celebrated 30 years of being in this industry, and it's really flown. It's crazy, really. As a supplier, we've historically provided free of charge product training in different formats. So for our customers, we've provided classroom style training with the configuration and installation of our products. We've also provided on-site training, so support with installers on installing devices and testing, telephone support. All of our manuals and data sheets are available to download from our website, so telealarm.com, shameless plug. Due to the COVID situation and lockdown, we've seen people are now more comfortable with using video conferencing, such as events like today. We provide website-based training, so using Teams, Zoom, or other platforms. We've also started to provide short tutorial videos on YouTube as refreshers for installers. And before the lockdown, we provided and funded free awareness training sessions for industry members on analog to digital migration. So this is not just about pushing our products, but sharing our knowledge and experience. And as an example of this, we ran some sessions at CTEC at the Living Lab at Barnet and Southgate College in partnership with UKTelehealthcare. That's me.
Thank you very much, Richard. And finally, last but not least, I'd like to hand you over to Brian, who's one of our long-term trading partners.
Hello, Jerry and everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about our work. I'm Brian Donnelly. I'm Chief Executive and founder of a community interest company called CCOPS. I've worked within the health service. I was latterly an advisor at the Welsh Government around all assistive technology services, looking at commissioning structures, service delivery and the clinical and technical aspects, and integration across health and social care, or lack of integration, I should say. And I set up CCOPS as a kick about 10 years ago. I've written standards around disability equipment, wheelchair and seating services. I've written an international code of practice for planning, commissioning and providing technology-enabled care services. Outcome-based standards. We work with about 200 NHS local authorities. We've got we're an accreditation body. We've got an external ISO team. And in addition to that, we're starting to move into, because of the interoperability aspects of how services are coming together through the technologies, we're starting to cover all assistive technology services, and it started recently to spill into the digital health space. We've recently, I've unbeknown to myself, I became an honorary lecturer in the University of Central Lancashire, and that was our chairman, Professor Mike Buick, who was a Deputy Medical Director at NHS England. We put together, with others, the content of an MSc, and postgraduate certificate and diploma, and that's what I've been doing over the lockdown, some of that. We've also got CPD certified courses that we put them on hold. They're now in place through Teams and Zoom, and that's run by our ISO team, our assessment team. And in addition to that, we want people, we do want to be telling people what to do. We want people to drive their own improvements. And so we've developed a piece of self-assessment software, and that incorporates all of our standards around, say, digital health, for example. It looks at the commissioning, it looks at the provision, it's got a continuous improvement focus. So it's not us telling people what to do, it's people driving their own quality and performance and learning in the process. That's in essence what we're doing and the space we're in. And it's quite broad, but it's all assistive technology services and covering the commissioning, the provision, the clinical technical aspects across all services.
Thank you very much, Brian. Okay, so really, I'd like to start with a question to Melanie and David, and follow up by Brian around your training plans. So if you could tell us a bit about your organisation's plans for developing training that will reflect the changing landscape for both the workforce and new technology in the tech industry. I know Disabled Living Foundation has been doing a lot of work around the tech side, so maybe you'd like to kick off and tell us a little bit more about what you're doing, Melanie.
Yeah, we've recently developed and have launched our Telecare Trusted Assessor training course. Obviously, because of the current pandemic situation, we've had to put that as an online course. But it's been several years in the making, I think. And as we've seen the change in landscape in terms of telecare, assistive technology, especially digital assistive technology, we're trying to respond to what the needs are out there. One of the key things that we found amongst the professionals is that they are not aware of what's available. So if they're not aware of what's available, how can they prescribe to vulnerable people and advise carers about the best types of equipment and solutions that can be available for them. So we've put together a training course that really is trying to focus on, and it's very difficult, I think, to pitch it at the right level as well. So one of the things that we've done is we've tried to pitch it at a level that is open to everybody. So we're really trying to look at what is telecare, what is technology-enabled care, what is this solution provision. We're also looking at a wide range of peripherals within the course to try to ensure that the main types of equipment that's available out there are known. I think one of the key things is we're trying to get out there as much as possible to professionals who prescribe what is actually available. But the key thing for us is once they know that information, it's about, as you know, the marketplace is saturated with so much product. So it's about ensuring that once they are trained and are aware of how to assess for that type of equipment, what should they prescribe? And one of the key things that we do try to promote are the other solutions that we have within our portfolio, which is ProAssist, which is the newest tool that we currently have. And that's specifically for if you are a clinician and require to make a clinical assessment. It will have on there the different types of equipment that you can make a business case for if you need to, clinical justification. So that's one of the key things that we're trying to utilize, the tools that a professional should have in their arsenal, really, once they're trained. So in answer to your question, I think it's a several-pronged approach, not only to train professionals, but once they're trained, to have an understanding about what is actually available on the market that they can prescribe for service users. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do at DLF. And we're quite happy to provide demonstrations about ProAssist. It is the newest tool that we actually are promoting at the moment for local authorities and for anybody who does do any types of prescribing. And one of the key things I would do is invite, and maybe we need to have a conversation, Jerry, about some of the suppliers and manufacturers that you know about, because what we need to do is have as much information as possible about suppliers to put their information onto our central repository of information called Living Made Easy. And that kind of fuels everything we do. So all the suppliers that we have on there, we have thousands of occupational therapists, local authority, workforce tapping into our online portals. So you get the maximum amount of exposure about what you are actually promoting. So it's a really useful tool, not just for the industry, but also for professionals and of course the end user.
Thanks, Melody. That's a really good point. And we've got 5 of our supplier members on today. So it's a really good message there to put out. You talked about the sort of people, organisations that you were aiming the training at. It's interesting that it's not just at people working directly in the tax industry, but the wider assessors from OT, etc. Is that what is your aims, really, to widen the knowledge of tax rather than keep it within a sort of closed shop?
I think it has to be. I think if we keep it very niche, then it's very difficult to get the message out to those who really need it, which is the service user. And we have lots of policies. We have all of these kind of papers that talk about the wonders of assistive technology. But if people don't know about it, then it's actually pointless. So I think one of the key things is going to directly to the people. So whether, and sometimes we use the usual suspects. We talk about occupational therapists, who are the main people who will prescribe equipment, and they are the key people. But also, I have a background of working for 15 years within a local authority, and I manage services for vulnerable elderly people. And one of the key aspects is everybody's responsible. It's not just the responsibility of an OT, it's the responsibility if you work in housing. If you come across somebody who has a need, it is your responsibility to feed that back and try to assist that person. Hence why I think it's really important that we make as much tools available as possible. So if you do come across in your working life, and even within the third sector, they're the people who go out the most and will see people. So how can they assist? So it's everyone's responsibility. And I think the trusted assessor portfolio of courses that we do have is essential for everybody. Hence why we tried to put something out there that was going to be accessible, whatever level you're at. And obviously we're going to start to continue to develop that, because I think once you have got that, your foot through the door in terms of what's available, you're going to want to progress that as well. And I think that's really important. And I think one of the key messages that I think at DLF we're trying to put out is that we want to engage with the technology-enabled care market. It's really important that we have a relationship with suppliers and manufacturers of technology so that we can find out what you're doing. And by doing that, we can then be the middle person, if you like, to engage you with our workforce that we deal with. So we're a bit of a matchmaker, I think, in some respects. We're the middle person. So it's really useful, such a meeting as this, to really connect with suppliers, because we're national. So we have England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales that we're connecting with. And I think it's really important. As a charity, we have no real invested interest other than to ensure that we make sure people get the help they need. So it's really important that we know what's going on in the tech side, as well as trying to understand the needs of the workforce that are trying to help service users.
Thank you. Did you want to follow up with that from a postgraduate point of view, Brian?
Not so much on the postgraduate stuff, but I think that's really important what Melanie was saying. But we're focusing on, if you imagine the marketplace, it's obvious. It's got supply and demand side, and what Melanie and others they're really on the supply side. We're focusing on the demand side around educating people planning services and looking at the readiness of organizations for adopting the new technologies, because that's absolutely key. I mean, I can remember 20 years ago, me and a head OT bought £500,000 worth of kit and then 6 months later, this kit isn't working, and when in actual fact, it was us as an organization, we were dysfunctional. We weren't ready as an organization for this kit. So we're looking at organizational readiness. What does readiness look like? Because that's in the best interest of the supplier market, making sure that they're putting their kit into an organization that is actually ready for it. You've probably experienced that yourself in the past, Jerry, as I'm sure others have, where you put kit in, you don't get the results that you were saying they could, and that's because they weren't functional as an organization. So we need to look at what does digital health readiness look like? Can we share and scale that? Everybody's looking at innovation, Innovate UK, the AHSNs. You can look at innovation until you're blue in the ears. But what percentage of this innovation is getting adopted? And I would say you're probably talking about 2 to 4%. All these SMEs are falling overboard every other day. So we need to look at infrastructure. We need to look at digital health readiness. We need to look at the wider market. So the master's program, that helps with some of that, some of our CPD. We can work with commissioners, and also our tool that we've developed that allows people to self-assess their own organization. We've got an overlay feature in the tool, so if one organization is working particularly well, we can share that with other areas. So there's a community building approach, not just top-down training. People are driving their own changes. We've got an outcome focused so that we don't fetter innovation. There's a danger in training that you tell people how to do things and that's how it's done then until the next time they get trained. We've got an outcome focused to our training and the tools to support that. But I think it's important that we start looking at the wider marketplace around demand and supply and not just the supply. I mean, the supply side is really important, but we have to look at both sides of that, and that's the space that we're in now, Jerry.
Good point, thank you. Maggie, you've raised your hand.
Yes, thank you. I am concerned that at the moment, 90+% of you are breaking the law. The law requires that you have training for what you do. And the law is very clear. For some typical reason in the UK, we ignore the law. But be careful, because if you were taken on by some very clever lawyers who I work with, they would wreck you in court. Now, it's very interesting. You see, the gas suppliers have a recognized certificate. If the man comes to your grandmother's gas cooker, he has to supply his recognized certificate to anybody who asks. The last time I talked to the largest supplier of e-technology systems in the UK, I said, how do you train your people? And he responded, it was an interesting idea. So Annette's talked a lot about doing courses, and well done, Annette, because that's what we desperately need. EKTG is establishing some simple courses in the autumn because we are so alarmed about the lack of recognized courses. In other countries, these happen, but in the UK, we are so behind in all this. Jerry, you've got a lot of work to do. We'd like to do it with you.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you very much for that, Maggie. Really, I think going over to Annette now, because there's two things really I'd like to ask you. So one is, our industry has been predominantly lax in engaging with apprenticeships, and Maggie made some very good points about training. Our standards tend to sit very much within our industry rather than across our industry and others. A lot of our learning in our industry came from the communications industry, from the telephone industry and that type of thing, and we never really moved far enough away from that. I think Brian's nodding and would agree on that. So two things, Annette. One is, as an industry that doesn't engage in apprenticeships, is there an opportunity for us? Is it something we could look at? And if we are, where do we start? What are the routes in, funding, etc.? And secondly, your knowledge is of a much wider accreditation systems around information technology in general. Is there a more robust method we can put into place that you think about as a fairly niche industry?
Mm-hmm. Sure, absolutely. And I think you're right, Jerry. In terms of industries, it's not only your industry that don't necessarily engage as much in training as they could, but it's sometimes quite overwhelming, because I think in terms of apprenticeships and other things that are out there, whether it be other forms of technical education, it all becomes quite overwhelming. So it's sort of breaking it up into manageable chunks and really understanding what's available. And I think Brian mentioned about the demand side. What's really important are what skills organizations need, and not just the big organizations. SMEs have very particular skills and don't always realize that they can benefit from something like an apprenticeship. So apprenticeships absolutely can be used across all organizations, and if it's a very large employer, in fact those employers pay an apprenticeship levy, and I don't know if listeners on here are aware, but that's, you know, a large percentage of their pay bill is a mandatory, like a tax, that goes towards the funding of apprenticeships, and anything that they don't use feeds into a public pot, which then supports SMEs. So that money is out there, and the government has absolutely got it very high on their agenda that they want businesses to be employing apprentices, because they are working and learning at the same time, and therefore getting a level of competence which hopefully will raise the skills and professionalize them in the right way. So in terms of accessing apprenticeships, there are lots of different apprenticeship standards available, and they're called apprenticeship standards because they're written by employers, again going back to the demand side, so that they are relevant to what's actually required in businesses. So in IT, for example, we have a range, and I mentioned them, a few of them when I opened up at the beginning, but whether it be software or network or infrastructure, there's a sort of a variety of different apprenticeships depending on the role that's needed. But there's also lots of new things coming out. And I think one thing that is common across all organizations, and I think listening to the earlier presentations, for example, there was reference to data and things that are happening which have an impact through robotics and AI. And there's a lot of new apprenticeships coming out, which actually has all been driven by the demand across employers in every sector. It's not just tech, it's every single sector that's impacted by that. So, you know, there's the choice and range out there. There's an increasing amount of apprenticeships that is meeting employers' needs in terms of their training needs. And if there's not, there's always opportunities to develop them, because all apprenticeships are developed by employers, groups of employers, and then approved by government. They have to get the government's permission to develop them, but they can do that. So if you have a gap as a sector and you can see, well, actually, we can see what apprenticeships are available, and those are all on the Institute for Apprenticeships website, and I can send you and Terence that so you can distribute it to the listeners. Actually, if there is a gap in your apprenticeship or training needs, a new apprenticeship can be developed. So there's lots out there. I think the most important thing for employers and people thinking about apprenticeships is to have a really good look at what's available, identify what's needed for their business, and then in terms of funding, if they're a large employer, they will absolutely be covered by the apprenticeship levy. And if they're a small employer, a small to medium-sized employer that has a pay bill of less than 3 million, and I think apart from about 2%, that's most people, the government actually pays for 95% of that training. The employer contributes 5%. So it's a good situation in terms of supporting talent development. And at this moment in time, and something again, because there's lots of information out there that a lot of people are not aware of, there is a government incentive to help people through the post-pandemic challenges that are going on at the moment. So from the 21st of April going right through to the end of September, you can get an additional grant of £3,000 per apprentice to support that training. And that's just purely to input into supporting the individual through their training programme. They are paid, and I think that's an important thing to remember about apprentices. They are paid positions, and those people are employed. Training's funded, you pay them a wage, there's a minimum apprenticeship wage, but it's a really good way of investing not only into training somebody, whether that be a new member of staff or somebody that needs to progress to a new position, but it does a lot of other things. It increases their motivation, it supports in terms of staff retention, and it really helps with progression and developing a talent pipeline within an employer as well. So there's a lot of benefits around employing an apprentice.
Thank you very much, Anna. That's really useful information to take us forward, really, because I think the workforce is changing. The tech industry needs to be wider than just the people working closely in that siloed situation, and that gives us some background really to move forward. So thank you very much for that. I'd like to move to a slightly different subject now, and the suppliers. So this is a question Richard touched on earlier, so I'll put it to Richard, but not wishing to put any of you on the spot, but Charlotte, Garrick, Laurie and Tony, if you'd like to come back on, I'm quite happy to put this to all the suppliers. So I think Richard said this, traditionally supply sectors provided training for their own equipment, but some suppliers have covered the more wider issues of installation, of assessment. But now there's so many other challenges we have, particularly around the digital transformation. How big do you think, Richard, the responsibility is for suppliers to provide that free training to the provider sector?
It's everything, I think, Jerry. We focus heavily on training and support for tech installers. If we just focus on installers, for example, in the pre-digital days, we'd provide cheat sheets. We'd do a training session and we'd give somebody an instruction manual with just some basic information on using a keypad to program a device. Now everything's done using a portal. And as you've seen today, I think every supplier presentation shows that they've got their own portal. Now, we know that installers have got differing levels of IT knowledge or ability. People don't like change, so if you've got a choice of devices, you're going to have to learn different portals. We see this as a challenge in the digital world for service providers to using different portals. So there's no one portal for different devices, but hopefully this is in its infancy stages, and I'm sure that these devices, the solutions or the software will be evolving, and in the future, open APIs will allow these portals to communicate to each other, or even the control center software or some sort of CRM system that will allow the portals to be used. Because I see that's going to be a big issue for our industry.
Thank you. Any of the other suppliers want to input to that at all? Silence.
Oh, hi Jerry, it's Laurie here from Cara. I can't start my video, but yeah, I think it's we see it as like a really crucial part of when we first kind of engage with customers, that we do give them that kind of full training and support, and for that to always be available. It's not something that we charge for. We think it's a really important part of what they've purchased. They've purchased from us, they've purchased everything that they need to learn about it. So yeah, we definitely see it as a crucial, and not just at the beginning, but kind of like an ongoing journey with the customers as well.
Right.
Yeah, it's Charlotte here from Chilburn, and we would completely agree. And I think the thing is, it's a benefit for us as well, because the reputation, let's say, and the success rate of our equipment, it lives and dies on people using it right. basically. So yeah, we have a trainer that's available to go to site. We're doing Zoom training. We've got telecare support line. And like Larry said, it's so important. It really, really is so critical. So yeah, I think it's a big responsibility for all suppliers.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Laurie.
And Tony here, I would echo that. I mean, everyone's approach is slightly different. The traditional approach is to use installers and subcontractors, which we do, but we have started now bringing on our own engineers. So we recognise that the installer pool is kind of a well-used and fixed resource, and it's only going to get worse as more people wake up to the fact that they're going to have to change over their systems. So we're getting ready for that. We're employing engineers and looking for more engineers. So we will use a blend of our own people because we can control the quality. We can control the process and install as where we have to.
Thank you. It's really reassuring to get that message for our provider members from the supply sector, that there's that commitment with such a lot happening in the industry at the moment. So I've got my 5-minute warning. Just very quickly, Maggie, with the UKTG, you're working very much across the European community. Are there any lessons that we should be learning from that wider community, and what's the UKTG's plans for the summer and what we'll be seeing from you?
Thank you very much, Jerry. Well, I hinted before that most countries are actually doing it better than we are. The problem has to be addressed. It stems slightly from the days of Mrs. Thatcher, when unfortunately she decided not to go for satellites, but go for dreadful fiber optic cables. And they are very, very much more complicated and less efficient. Satellites are much more efficient and easier, but we've got what we've got. But the point being that they have better training in so many countries, and they realize it's not just for the sake of it, but it saves money. And you see, if you go to Estonia, a small country, I realize 93% of the population have all their records online. And you may have the ability to get your passport or your driving license, but how many of you have your health records? How many of you have your education records? So we do need to wake up, as it were. And these people also meet the law. They're very, very aware of the law. And if you go to the Netherlands or Spain or many of these countries, that is why they have better education. And again, I say, beware the lawyers. The lawyers are waking up to this fact. Recently, I was asked to talk to a big international legal conference, and the lawyers were very interested in the law and technology. They're interested in making money, so be careful.
Strong message. Thank you, Maggie. So before we wrap up, David, have you got anything else to add on Melanie's messages from Disabled Living Foundation?
No, just to confirm, we have a new product called Process that presents solutions based on person's functional needs. And you can easily consider options across a range of technologies and choose the right combination for your client or service user. Products in the DLF's central databases are catalogued using ISO international standard classifications and then mapped to functional needs. So it's a new approach to searching, and it creates standard impartial approach that you can rely on as a whole market scan and then choose from that with confidence. So we're really excited about this new product we have. And, we're reaching out a lot to local authorities who are looking to purchase it and obviously provide us with the income for it. So thanks, Sherry.
Thank you, David. Anything else to add, Brian, before we wrap up the session?
No, not really, Jerry. It was very interesting to hear all the different perspectives. I mean, one of the things I would suggest to the suppliers is to perhaps look at some training courses for people planning and commissioning services in terms of the benefits of, I mean, for example, I went to a training course on how to sell to the NHS. I mean, I used to work in procurement within the NHS about 24 years ago. And there is no way to sell to the NHS. There is no one way to sell to the NHS. And it was all about trying to sell products, when in actual fact it should be, what does your product do? How is that going to help with prevention, early intervention, enablement, hospital discharge? What are the clinical benefits? And how does that fit in with like the new integrated care systems, their strategic objectives? How does your product fit in, help them achieve that? So I think there's some awareness around suppliers moving into the space of providing training for people planning and commissioning services. That's it, really.
Jerry, might I just say, I think Brian's actually talking great sense. And in our courses that we're introducing in September and October, we're having very small time course for government, we're having for policymakers, we're having for budget holders, because they have a big responsibility for spending money, as Brian said. And we're also having for practitioners. And then we hope to have a joint event when some of these people can be brought together. Sorry, another one for industry, of course. But all of these things are really crucial.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So we've come to the end of the panel session. I'd really like to thank all the panelists for their input. It's been really interesting. Just a few takeaways from me before we wrap up. So from the presentations, from Tony, from Everon, what came across was talking about digital always on, taking the opportunity for a positive from digital, that you've got always on systems that you can use to be more proactive. Laurie, that was really interesting when you talked about care and working with focus groups as you're developing your equipment. I know you've always looked working locally, working with the customers, the end users, but to see that work's being carried out on that grassroots level is brilliant. We talked about, Gareth talked about realizing the benefits of digital and also about the open standards. And something that's been challenging our industry for so long is interoperability. And it's great that the suppliers are looking at these open standards so that we can mix and match protocols, mix and match equipment. And Charlotte talked about again about proactivity and the interoperability with using third-party equipment such as care on the Chubb devices. So there are already positive messages that there are things happening in the industry that are helping us move forward and to support a much wider section of those who need it most, and particularly as we have a growing elderly population, particularly with long-term conditions and comorbidities. The takeaways from the panel session, thank you, Melanie and David, to put together a catalogue of what's available online that's accessible to everyone who needs it to assess and prescribe technology is something I think we've always said we're really keen to work with you on. And I think, you'll get the same reaction from Richard, Charlotte, Gareth, Tony, and other suppliers as well. More than happy, I think, to support you in that. So maybe we need to get together and talk about that. From Brian and Annette, really looking at not just the supply sector, but the demand drive is really important, I think. we as an industry sort of sit back a bit and don't ask for the training. We don't make those requests. But demand-driven training, I think both Brian and Annette's message really important. And thank you, Maggie, for giving us your views on Europe and particularly standards and legality. That's really important for us. So I'd like to thank all the presenters, all the panelists for making it such an interesting session, all the delegates for joining us. We're going to take a break for August, July and August, and we'll be back in September. So the dates will be up on the website soon, and you'll get the mail outs. As Terence said, all the panelists and presenters' information will be sent out to the delegates who signed up and joined today. I'd like to thank Terence for co-presenting and Julia for running the production in the background. Look forward to seeing you all in August. Thank you very much, and enjoy the tennis and the football this evening.
Thank
you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you.